Hey guys, so today we're going to go over the EcoFlow River Pro. It's a portable power station, and I've got the EcoFlow River Pro. I got the extra battery for it, and I got the solar panels for it. So we're going to go over all the specs, the features, best uses. We're going to plug in the extra battery and the solar panel. We're going to do the whole thing. Now, in full disclosure, EcoFlow did send me this product for review, and this is a sponsored video. I'm really excited this finally came in, so let's bust it open and get started. Let's see what we got here. Packaging's nice. Let's dig a little deeper. Okay. Ooh, nice. Look at that. They packed this thing in here nicely. Alright, so this is the EcoFlow River Pro. It's very solid, nice styling, not cheap at all. I like that a lot. This gives you a good first impression. It comes with a power cable, a DC cable, a solar charging cable with MC4 connectors, and a car charging cable. Alright, so it says here, a little quick start guide, that we're going to need to charge this up before we use it. Okay, so before we get started, let's take a quick look at the key features. First, it has very fast charging, 0 to 80% in 1 hour. That's 2, 3, 4 times the competition, and it can charge fully in just an hour and a half. It has a relatively high storage capacity, 720 watt hours, and you can double that to 1440 if you get the extra battery. It's relatively low cost, and it's lightweight. It has a nice handle on it, 16 pounds, you can easily carry it around. Very portable. It has the option of a solar input, so you could be out in the middle of nowhere and still generate power and recharge the batteries up to 200 watts. You can also use it as an uninterrupted power supply, so you could plug in critical things like a CPAP machine. It would pass the power right through when the utility's up, and when the utility goes out, it automatically switches to the batteries. And finally, it has a very simple to use user interface, a great screen. Let's start with a quick walk around of the system. Turn the power on, and right away we see a really nice, clean display. Not a bunch of stuff you don't need, but everything you do need. It tells you right away how much time you have left on your battery. The percent charged is 29%. It gives you a little graphic, and it shows you the inputs and the outputs. Really nicely done on the display. Over here we have a light. It gets brighter, and it flashes SOS. Moving along, we got the USB-C. That's a 100 watt max output. 2 of the USB-A's at 12 watts, and the fast charge at 28 watts. Moving up here to the DC, we got a little cover we pull out, and then it's got your basic auto type accessory port. That's 13.6 volts, 10 amps, 136 watts max. Then it has 2 little DC ports, and they give us a cable. Plug in here. Okay, the cover just goes back in here. It fits pretty tight. That's good. Flip it around to this side. We've got a fan. We've got 3 AC outputs. Okay, those are 120 volts, 60 hertz, 600 watts continuous, and 1200 watts surge on these outputs. This is how you turn it on the inverter. That powers up these outputs, and you hear the fan come on. Okay. Now it looks, the connector looks a little funky, but you see it's just your typical plug in whatever you need to plug in there. Okay, under this little cover, that is the expansion port. That's where you plug in the extra battery. So I've got that, and we'll be plugging that in later. Let's flip it around to the other side. Got a cover here. This is the AC input and the DC inputs. This is how you charge it or run it. So first we have an extreme charge 660 watt max input, guys. That is really good. That stands out. 660 watts. That's a lot more than most of the other systems in this class. Very good job on that. This is a circuit breaker. It's 10 amp overload protection. And then we have the DC inputs. Okay, that's an XT60 connector. And they give us this XT60 connector with the MC4 connections for a solar panel. Now these are standard connections, right? This is not proprietary, which means we can plug in our own solar panel here. That's really nice feature. Most systems don't allow you to do that. You do have to be careful that you don't go over 25 volts. So if you got a panel that's 30, 40, 50 volts, you can't use it. All right, and also you can't exceed 200 watts. But that is a nice feature. I did get their solar panel kit, and we're going to be plugging that in and checking it out. It's 160 watts, so pretty close to the max. All right, they also sent us this cable. So it's XT60 connector on one end, car jack on the other end. So you plug that right into your car port and charge the system. It's 12 to 24 volts on that and 10 amps max. Alright, so there's the grounding screw if you want to use it. I mean, in general, this thing is very solid. It looks great. It's very nice styling. Nothing cheap about it. So far, I'm impressed. Okay, so let's recap those key specifications. On the AC output, we have 600 watts continuous on the inverter, 1200 watt surge. On the battery side, it's 720 watt hours. That comes from a lithium ion battery using 18650 cells. It's good for 800 cycles and still have 80% plus of its life. You can double that capacity to 1440 watt hours with the extra battery. On the AC input, we have the extreme charge. It's 660 watts input, which is really good. The DC inputs allow for solar or from a car or other DC source. On the solar, you got to be less than 25 volts max on the input, and you can take in up to 200 watts max. While we're on specifications, maybe I could clear up a couple of things that folks generally get mixed up. The first one is continuous watts versus surge watts. Continuous is what it can provide long term. Surge is there to provide that initial startup power when you first turn on a motor or some device. That only lasts for about 1 to 3 seconds. Alright guys, so for example, when I start this impact wrench, it's going to have a surge of probably 700-800 watts, and then it'll settle down. So just watch the screen and you'll see it jump up and then come down. There you go. That's the surge. Second is the watts versus the watt hours. Totally different things. You can think of the watts as your inverter, the watt hours as your battery. And think of the watts as what can this system do, what can I run, and the watt hours is how long can I run it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is plug this guy in and get it all charged up. So I'm plugging in the AC to the wall. Alright, we'll see how this goes. I'll come back in less than an hour, should be fully charged. Alright, there we go, 100% charged. Okay, so there are lots of ways you could use this system. Now I like to focus on the electronics that don't use a lot of power. Now if you were using a big gas generator, a lot of times those put out dirty power. The total harmonic distortion can be quite high and it's not good to plug this type of stuff in. But this system has a nice clean sine wave and it's safe to use on this type of stuff. So for example, if I were doing some type of video in a remote location, I'd like to be able to recharge all my cameras. I got a lot of cameras. I want to charge up my phone, my GoPros. If there were a storm rolling in, we lose power temporarily, I want to be able to charge up flashlights, charge all my batteries, make sure the radios are charged up. And it's good to be able to plug in a laptop. You can got an extra screen plugged in here, and you can recharge your drone batteries. Run lights. Lots of stuff like this is what I like to focus on for this system. So let's plug some of the stuff in and get an idea of how much it all pulls and how long it might last. Alright guys, got everything plugged in. It's not really drawing that much, 140 watts. Not bad. Alright, so things were getting charged up, so I went ahead and added some new things. Got the DeWalt out, its a little charger. Doesn't use that much though, surprised. Plugged in my 2 radios, plugged in this light, another light over there. So I mean, we got a bunch of stuff plugged in here, but it's really only 127 watts. Alright guys, just for you, I plugged in the little fridge. Now when I first plugged it in, there was a surge, but it's not using that much now. Maybe 80-90 watts. That's not bad. So now I've got everything. Got cameras, batteries, DeWalt's, lights. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights on. The laptop, the extra screen, phone, GoPros, bunch of stuff, but we're only, you know, a couple hundred watts. So yeah, pretty cool. All right, so we've been plugging along for a while here. We're down to 57% charge, pulling 187 watts with all this stuff plugged in, even the fridge, lights, laptops, all this stuff. But now we're gonna stress it out a little bit. I want to see if we can push the surge on this. So I'm gonna turn all the power strips off. Now we're still pulling 44 watts because I got other stuff plugged in on that side. But when I turn this on, it's gonna start all these things at the same time, and we should see a surge. Boom, there you go. Well, it jumped up to, that's just over the limit. Yeah, we're good. Alright, so that worked. We're back to stable. Next, I'm going to plug in the utility. This is the utility line. Plugs in here. I only got one hand, so hang on a sec. Okay, so now look at the input is coming up, and it's going to start charging. So it's taking in power from the utility, passing it through to all the stuff I have plugged in. That's the output. And it's charging the battery. Pretty cool. Alright, so one more thing. This does act as an uninterrupted power supply, a UPS. Now, keep in mind it has a 30 millisecond switch, so I wouldn't plug in a desktop or things that have to switch quickly. But for this type of stuff, no problem. I can unplug the utility, and it'll switch right over to the battery. Alright, let's crack open this extra battery. Let's see what we got here. See that? There we go. Alright, so basically we've got the extra battery and we've got the connection cable here. On the front, or on the top, there's a power button. Turn that on. Gives an indication of how charged it is. On the other side, that's where you plug in the cable. So that's about it. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hook up the extra battery, and we're going to plug it into this guy, and we're going to get them both charged fully before we do anything with them. So somehow it figured it out and is it's charging. This one was already charged, so it's really charging this guy, and it's doing 600 watts. And after an hour or so, we're at 100%. So both the EcoFlow Pro and the extra battery are fully charged. Check this out. I got this system running. I've got a power strip coming out, and I've got a small little old fridge plugged into it, and I've got these 3 lights plugged into it, and all that is going from about 115 to about 140 watts on the output. And right now it's plugged into the wall, so you see the input's 120 watts, the output's 114, so there's some losses on the inverter. And I just plugged in this kilowatt meter. So so we can keep track of it there as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unplug the unit. So you see the input drops to 0, the output's still 112 watts. We're 100% charged, and it thinks it can run that for about 14 hours. Now I do have the extra battery plugged in as well, so I don't think it'll run for 14 hours, but let's find out. Okay, so it's about 10 a.m. This thing's been running our mini fridge and lights for about 12 or 13 hours straight. We still have 41% charge in our battery, so really looking pretty good. That gives you a little bit of an idea of what it could do. Now let's say if your power was still out at this point, but the sun has come up, so this would be a good time to bust out the old solar panel and see what that can do. I thought I would just show you that we have used 580 watt hours out of the 1440, which sounds about right. Okay, here we have the 160 watt panel. Let's crack this open and see what we got. Here we go. So, this is the case. Nice case, zipper opening. And here's the panel. This thing is solid, very sturdy. Just opens up. Got the MC4 connectors. We're just going to put this out in the sun, plug it in, and see what it can do. So I came out here in the sun, put a couple of stakes in the ground, and I'm going to unfold that panel and plug it into my system over here. And then we'll look at the screen and see what we get. Alright, so we've got it plugged in, and it's charging the batteries at about 100 watts right now, and that should continue to rise a little bit as the sun climbs up. At this rate it would take about 9 hours, but I think it'll be a little less than that as we get more power out of this panel. It's been about an hour. We're up to 100 watts on the input from the solar panel, 47% charge, and it thinks it's going to take 8 hours to completely charge both batteries to 100%. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it works, and you could be in the middle of nowhere, camping on a beach, wherever, and you got power, and you're generating power, and you can use that power. I noticed carrying it over here that, you know, it's about 16 pounds in each hand, and it makes it a lot easier to walk with, you know, they have nice handles you have on each side distributed versus just carrying one big, you know, 30-40 pound unit. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours now, and we've got about 112 watts coming in, 55% charge with 7 hours to go. And yeah, it's doing pretty good. It's sitting out here in the sunlight and the heat. I got it covered over right now so you can see the screen, but it's been baking in the sun. I would definitely get a set of 50-foot MC4 extension cables so that I could have this thing inside the camper or in the house in the cool air conditioning while it stretches out to the panels that are outside. Coming up on 3 hours, got 109 watts coming in, 62% charged with 6 hours to go. Now I've got some other tests to do, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the wall and get a fast charge. Now I could charge it up on this solar panel indirectly now, not directly, but I can take this 4,500 watts through a combiner box and do a charge controller to the battery bank to an inverter, convert it to AC, plug it into this guy, and he'll take 660 of those watts and charge up in less than an hour. Be charging on solar and won't even know it. Alright guys, so after 3 hours on solar, we went up to 63% charged on both batteries. But now we're just going to speed things up. Plug this guy in and get some power in here. There you go. Alright guys, so the video's running a bit long and I still had a lot of stuff to get to, but I want to touch on just a few things real quick. First, it has a Wi-Fi and there's a phone app. It allows you to change a lot of the features on the system. I recommend that you look into that. Second, there's an X boost mode. Now this unit puts out 600 watts, and if you want to run something that's say 1,000 watts, X boost gives you a way to do that. But what you need to know is the way they achieve that is they reduce the voltage, okay, and that's fine for some heating elements and other devices. But you wouldn't want to plug in your computer or other stuff like that. At least I wouldn't, because it could damage it. So for me, I'm just going to leave this off unless I have a real good reason to use it. Also, I did plug in a window air conditioner, and it will run it. It runs around 400 watts or so. It has a higher startup current, but it will run it if you needed to. I'm also including a chart here of some experiments I've done in the past on my window units, so you can get an idea of how much power it uses and how long you could run it if you had to. I also plugged in my chest freezer. It ran about 90 watts. That's not bad at all, and I think that's something I would do to save. You know, there's a lot of money in that chest freezer, so you can save a lot. The next thing was the refrigerator. I plugged in a full-size refrigerator, and that ran, I think it was around 120 watts continuous, but had a high startup current. But it did run it, and it would run it for a while. And finally, I put in here a chart of the EcoFlow family of products, so the Max, the Pro, and the Delta. So you could just compare cost and you know, all the different specs side by side and pick the one that, you know, fits your needs the best. For me, it is the Pro. I think that's a really good price versus performance combination. So that's the one I would go with. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.